Good afternoon, and welcome to the Music and Technology Seminar at Carnegie Mellon. We've all heard of smart phones, but what about a smart piano? Frederic Chiu, concert pianist and adventurous thinker, who has also studied computer science, has worked with Yamaha to develop and test features of the Disklavier, an internet-connected piano that is perhaps the most advanced collaborative instrument in the world. Coming in February is the first Disklavier Festival here at Carnegie Mellon, arranged by Professor Chiu. He will tell us now about the festival and show some examples of what this amazing piano can do. Please welcome Frederic Chiu to the Music and Technology Seminar.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. It's great to be here. I have to admit I'm a little bit, it's going to be a little bit spontaneous because I realized I bought a new computer and I had not set up some things on it that I have on my old computer. So forgive any little twitches that happen here. Yes, I'm a professor of piano, but I've always been interested in computer science, and I, in fact, got a BS in computer science at Indiana University alongside my BM of piano. And I had the great honor to meet and study with Douglas Hofstadter, who started teaching at Indiana when I was a freshman there. And I was already a big fan of his Gödel, Escher, Bach book, which I had read multiple times during high school. So I brought in my book, had him sign it, and that led me to just an exploration of computer science that has helped me so much in my piano playing. Um, my Just a little anecdote, my parents just recently downsized and they found a box full of my school papers, which they've been keeping for decades, to give to me. And among those papers, I found my report card from Indiana, where in my senior year I had Artificial Intelligence 1, Artificial Intelligence 2. I got an A in both of those classes, glad to say. But now thinking back on what that meant 40 years ago, it's a very different thing today when we talk about artificial intelligence. So I'm at the same time very comfortable and at the same time very obsolete in terms of computer science and technology. Um, I have been a Yamaha artist for 35 years, and that coincidentally is also the amount of time that Yamaha has been doing research and development on the Disklavier technology. So I did kind of grow as a musician in parallel with the growth of the Disklavier. And I think it is a remarkable tool, and that's why I felt a festival called the DKV Festival, Disklavier Festival, is something that is might seem kind of narrowly focused, but in fact is quite broad and can open horizons. And that's what I'm hoping to show at the DKV Festival. The dates of the festival are February 3, 4, and 5. So it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. There's going to be a DCFX, a Disklavier CFX, which is the 9-foot piano, brought into Kresge for the duration of the festival. And I've scheduled a number of events that show different ways of using the DKV towards musical creativity ends. The technology, of course, of the DKV is fascinating, but at the same time, it's extremely simple. And what I think uh, makes it both complex and simple at the same time is because the piano as an instrument, as an acoustic instrument, is also very complex and simple at the same time. The idea of limiting an infinite range of pitches and narrowing that down to only 12 pitches to choose from might seem like a simplification, but as with artificial intelligence, it's the recursive nature, the multi-layered nature of creating that chromatic scale that allows for a different kind of complexity. The fact that 12 notes of the scale are predetermined but that the piano can play more than one of those at the same time. And even in playing multiple notes, those multiple notes can be different pitches, different lengths, different color, different dynamic, different rhythms. That's what makes the piano such an incredible instrument. Add to that the Disklavier technology, which basically is a player piano technology. It records the gestures of the keys, it records the gestures of the pedal, and it records those with different laser sensors inside the instrument and reproduces those movements with solenoids. There's nothing that actually touches the mechanism inside of the Disklavier, so it's all touchless. There's no difference in terms of how one feels when playing a Disklavier piano, but it allows the piano to play itself based on the recordings, and the recording is totally in MIDI in MIDI language. So it's very simple. There's a pitch, there's a duration, there's a velocity, and just with those three very simple variables, we get the entire spectrum of piano playing. The complex nature of the sound of the piano is built into the piano itself. So it's actually quite remarkable to realize that by just determining the pitch, duration, and velocity of the hammer hitting the string at that particular moment, that helps us derive all of the different variations of sound, of color, of mood, of expression that pianists have at their fingertips, literally. I just want to go through perhaps the events of the DKV Festival and just talk a little bit about what each of those events brings to the forefront of how it's helping with the music making. On February 3rd, the first day on Monday at 3 o'clock, Hratch Theresian. Hello? Hratch Theresian from Yamaha is going to be here, and he'll do a kind of a technical introduction to the Disklavier. So for people who are interested in knowing a little bit more about the mechanism of how it works and the stages that it's gone through over the 3+ decades of R&D on Disklavier, Hratch will kind of expose all of that and demonstrate what the Disklavier can do. That's at 3 o'clock. Later that evening at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be playing the opening concert, which I've ironically titled Frederic Chiu and Frederic Chiu Piano Duo. And that is going to be a program that consists of solo pieces and duo piano pieces by Debussy, Prokofiev, and Chopin. The duo piano pieces are written originally for duo piano. The Debussy piece for two pianos is his arrangement of the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, which of course is an orchestral work, so it's a transcription. But it was a working transcription for Debussy to work out the music before orchestrating it. And it's Debussy's own arrangement for two pianos that I'll be playing. And the way I'll be playing it is I have pre-recorded one of the piano parts on Disklavier and pre-recorded not just the audio, but also the video. So the visual of me sitting at the piano playing is a very important factor in this two piano concert because, of course, the communication between the two pianists during a duo concert is extremely important for coordinating attacks, for basically each of the players is acting like a conductor for the other player, and it's a mutual symbiosis of the two personalities. what makes it interesting for me, what the reason I thought of doing this is because there are certain things that are hard to explain as a performer, and to try to work it out with a duo partner, of course, that's the great satisfaction and also a great challenge of playing chamber music. Uh, and I think that playing with my own playing, with my own self, is a very strange, very satisfying but strange feeling, because I do know exactly what the other person is thinking. And having the visual cues of myself in the past uh, is a very playing with the hologram kind of. Uh, so I think in this particular program, what's interesting is not so much the technical detail of how the Disklavier has recorded one part and I'm coordinating a live playing with that, but the fact that, for the Debussy pieces, for example, the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, written in 1895, we rarely hear that piece in an orchestra performance or even a two-piano performance alongside solo piano pieces from that same era, that very early Debussy era, where every month, almost every year, every month, he was making discoveries and experimenting with how to write music that was going to be explicitly not German, and how to develop this French language. And I think it's an opportunity in this duo piano concert to put solo piano and duo piano repertoire together. So I'm going to be playing some of the Suite Bergamasque movements, including the Clair de Lune, which is very stylistically similar to the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. Perhaps less developed, but certainly that kind of impressionism, that early impressionism of chords that don't function in any particular way, but have particular feelings and color and mood, and just kind of a patchwork of different moods placed next to each other, which I think is one of the hallmarks of Impressionist music. Hearing the solo version of Clair de Lune followed right up with the piano version, two piano version of Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, really shows that very close relationship of those two pieces, and that we would never have an opportunity to have an orchestral concert and then a solo pianist coming out and playing Clair de Lune. So that's an opportunity to show, to put pieces side by side that don't necessarily have that much opportunity to be side by side. Also on the program, I'm playing a kind of rare piece, a two-piano arrangement of Schubert waltzes by Prokofiev. Prokofiev, who was a great pianist himself, spent, I would say, more of his life being a performer than he would have wanted to. He wanted to be just a pure composer. He was always very jealous of Stravinsky, who was able to focus purely on composition. But nonetheless, Prokofiev was a wonderful pianist. In fact, there's a very funny anecdote about Prokofiev and Stravinsky and their relationship. They were on a cruise ship coming across the Atlantic the first time that they were coming to the United States. So the ship was arriving in New York, and of course, at that era, that's how people got across the ocean. And the newspapers would be there reporting on who got off the boat, what personalities were coming to New York. And there was a picture of Sergei Diaghilev, the great impresario, Stravinsky, and Prokofiev, the three of them coming off the boat together, with tours being scheduled for them. And the newspaper headline was, "The great impresario Sergei Diaghilev, the great composer Igor Stravinsky, and the great pianist Sergei Prokofiev." And Prokofiev was extremely irritated by that for many years, apparently. Nonetheless, the fact that he was a great pianist means that he also was able to leave us great piano music. This arrangement of Schubert waltzes for two pianos is very unusual. It's one of the few pieces of Prokofiev that does not have an opus number. So what does that signify? Probably that he took it on as kind of a side project. What I've read is that Stravinsky recommended to Prokofiev organizing some of these more known pieces, kind of classical pieces, to play in his own recitals so that he would have a more diverse repertoire to offer people. And he made a one piano version of these Schubert waltzes, and then quickly followed up with a two piano version, which has the one piano version is very Schubert. It's almost just note for note what Schubert wrote, just arranged in different orders. The two piano version, Prokofiev does start to slip in some of his kind of strange neoclassic rhythms and harmonies that make it much more biting. And definitely the little bit of Prokofiev fingerprint is in the two piano version, much more than the one piano. And so this is an opportunity to hear Prokofiev in kind of an unusual setting where he's putting his style up there along with Schubert's, and one can hear the conflict and the confluence of those two styles. Along with that two piano work, I've scheduled, programmed a few of my own transcriptions of Prokofiev from the Lieutenant Kije suite. And that just gives us an opportunity to hear some of this incidental music. The Lieutenant Kije music originally came from a soundtrack that Prokofiev was commissioned to write. The original soundtrack music itself also has no opus number. So these two non-opus number pieces will be side by side on that program. And then the last group of pieces I'm playing on that program is Chopin. There's a wonderful rondo, one of four rondos that Chopin wrote early in his career, all of them written before the age of 20. And this particular one in C major exists in a one piano version as well as a two piano version. And the thinking is that Chopin would play this at salons, the one piano version, and probably was asked to arrange a two piano version for a private performance at some point. The two piano version is rarely heard, so it's great to hear that piece alongside some of the etudes from that early period, almost exactly the same age. He wrote his first book of etudes, Opus 10. And the technique is directly taken from the etudes and used in the rondo. So it's a very wonderful kind of juxtaposition to hear those early pieces followed by a piece that uses that technology, the technique. Let me share a little bit of the two piano Schubert. This was a performance that I did a few years ago. See if I can pull this up. I'll just play a few minutes of this, but the way it's been filmed, you'll see where the Disklavier piano is playing on its own with the keys and the pedals moving. Here we go. You can find that on YouTube. If you're interested to hear the rest of it, just search Frederic Chiu Piano Duo, and you'll hear actually all three of the pieces that will be performed on Monday, the first day of the DKV Festival. The second day is devoted to, I've invited a wonderful friend, Dan Tepfer, who's a jazz pianist, also a person who plays classical. He plays a lot of Bach. He also studied astrophysics as an undergrad. So another one of these science music people. And he's going to demonstrate a more real-time use of the Disklavier. He's written some algorithms on his laptop that alter what he plays. They basically respond to the playing that he's doing, and he has a 500 millisecond latency. And so he is playing with someone who's half a second behind him and improvising with himself on that level. He's written algorithms that he'll demonstrate at his program on Tuesday at 8 o'clock. He's calling his program Natural Machines, and he's going to demonstrate a whole bunch of different ways of using this kind of real-time alteration of Disklavier playing. The one example that I'd like to play for you before I even go into any explanation, I think it will explain itself pretty well. Share this again. Okay, let's see how this goes. I'll stop it there. You can also find that on YouTube. He did a whole series of things during the pandemic when he was stuck at home. Just fascinating to explore, and he'll be doing a large variety of those things at his Natural Machines concert on Tuesday. So you can see what happens is that whatever note he plays, the laptop algorithm plays it back an octave lower, about half a second later. And it's always a half second, so basically that establishes a kind of a tempo. And then whatever he plays, he knows that there's going to be another voice an octave lower following him. And then using that concept, which is very Bach kind of approach to things, is he writes, he plays and basically structures things knowing that there will be this canon at the octave. I'm not exactly sure what algorithms he's going to be demonstrating on Tuesday, but there's the octave lower, there's intervals lower, which of course is the basis for the whole Goldberg variations, is that every third variation is a canon at a different interval that goes from unison all the way to 10th. He has other interesting things too, where a mirror image can be created, where if he plays intervals going up, the algorithm will play intervals going down. There's another one which I really enjoy where he plays a note and it plays it just plays the octaves all the way down to the bottom of the keyboard. That's a fun one. And I'm not sure what else he's come up with, but I'm sure he's coming up with some super funky algorithms to play with. And that shows a little bit of how the Disklavier can be an interactive musical tool if you know how to code, if you know how to control the Disklavier, all things are possible. One of the things that I regret not having enough time, but I was talking with Nancy Galbraith about composition and the use of the Disklavier in actual composing. And I was talking with her about doing some of her pieces. That'll be for next time, at the next Disklavier Festival. And then there's going to be on Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m., there will be a master class taught by the wonderful pianist and teacher Miriam Conti, who's faculty at the Juilliard School. But she will not be here personally. She's going to be in Buenos Aires, where she lives and where she runs a school and a festival. And it's also where she teaches from to do her Juilliard classes. And this is possible because at Juilliard, they have a Disklavier. And Miriam has a Disklavier at her studio in Buenos Aires. So I've taken the opportunity to hire her to do a masterclass with remote live technology where the pianos connect with each other over the internet. And it's not real time, of course, there's some latency, but there can be remote controlling of one piano with another using another instrument. So basically the students will be on the stage at Kresge and Miriam will be in her studio in Buenos Aires. And when the students play the Disklavier on the Kresge stage, it will be sending that signal to the piano in Buenos Aires in Miriam's studio and making that piano play the way the students are making it play in Kresge. Just a little bit of lag, but Miriam won't notice that because she's not trying to play dual piano music with them. But in listening to them play, it's going to be totally in sync. The video that's going to be sent across Zoom and the playing that's going to be sent across remote live from Disklavier to Disklavier. I used this technology a lot during the first couple of years of the pandemic when in-person was just totally not a question. I have a Disklavier here in my studio and I have one at home in my home studio. And so I was able to connect those and students would come into my studio here, turn on Zoom, they do a little synchronization, and then whatever they played, I could hear them playing it on my piano. And whatever I played to demonstrate for them would be reproduced here on this piano in front of them. And it allows for some very interesting teaching opportunities. One thing being, I could take my shoes off and put my big toes on the pedals, and I could feel the way they were pedaling. I could feel the way the students were using the pedal in terms of the timing, in terms of the control, in terms of half pedaling nuances or not. And it was something that I realized I could discern more by listening to their playing that way than I could when they were in person, where their feet are actually covering the pedals and it's very hard to see down there. So it offered a kind of an unexpected advantage. There's an advantage also to not having the student's hands on the keyboard kind of blocking the keys that they're playing. Just to see the keys going up and down without the hands in front of it is an opportunity to see, are they touching extra notes? Are they attacking at the same time? Are they solid in their attack, or is the key wobbling? So there's some very interesting things when you get the actual body out of the way and you see the results of the gestures. So that was kind of an unexpected benefit of teaching remote live. I use the Disklavier in the studio also without remote live to record students when they play for me and then just play it right back for them. I could simplify my teaching a lot just by having students come in and play, and I don't even have to say anything. I just play their playing back to them, and they can teach themselves by watching themselves play. Because it's very revealing to see the results of what you're doing as opposed to thinking about the action that is causing those results. And that's what the Disklavier allows me to do, whether it's remote live or live. It allows me to focus on something that is very revealing. There are going to be 2 students playing for Miriam, and the interaction is going to be very natural, I think, just like a master class. Very quickly, we adopt the illusion that the person is there because the playing is so visceral, and because the sound of the piano is not coming through a speaker, but actually coming from the piano, and it becomes a much more kind of intuitive approach to hearing music. The final event of the DKV Festival is on Wednesday at 8 o'clock. It's what I call the lid session, and I've organized multiple lid sessions over the past few years. LIDS stands for Lay It Down, and it's basically a way to celebrate piano playing at an amateur level. There are many people, the number that I found on Google, I don't know how accurate that is, but the number I found on Google is that 43% of people in the US have taken piano lessons at some point in their life. And that's kind of an extraordinary number. I would guess it's something similar to, like how many people have played a certain sport. It's an activity that is common to almost half of the population. And there are certain things that kind of bond people in that kind of piano lesson experience, preparing, performing, nerves, performing in a student recital, this kind of long-term progress that one makes at the piano. It's not something that you can cram and perfect in a short amount of time. The more you do daily practice, the more benefits you get. I think these are things that can help unify people, that can help bond people, but it's also a very solitary activity, playing the piano. And so there's rarely an opportunity to ask someone, hey, do you play the piano? And see if there is that common bridge of experience. So the lid session is a way to bring out this hidden community by inviting people to come and play for each other. And what I've done over the last few months, getting my students out there, a lot of my BXA students have gone out to investigate and to scout out faculty and staff who play the piano. And I'm happy to say there are going to be at least 7 people from across campus who are going to be coming to play for people on that last event on Wednesday. There's someone from the university marketing department. There's someone from computer science. There's someone from, two people from the Mellon College of Science, from the physics department, a couple of PhD students. Who else is going to play? Oh, the tennis coach, who's also in computer science. He's going to be playing. There's 7 people of all over campus. Oh, someone from Tepper who's going to come, someone who teaches speaking, public speaking at Tepper is going to perform. So it's going to be a real interesting mix of people who are contributing to this concert. They're going to be playing classical music, jazz, songbook. Somebody's playing Stardust by Hoagie Carmichael. Someone's playing their own compositions. So it's going to be a very diverse range of music. It's going to be a very diverse range of people. And all of this, I think, will be a surprise to a lot of the people who come. I have a feeling that students, colleagues, friends, many of them may not even be aware that these people play piano. And to suddenly see, oh, such Professor such and such plays. I didn't know he played. I took lessons myself. There's an instant kind of empathy that builds from having that shared experience. So that's what I'm hoping with the lit sessions here, which is CMU community. This time being the first time I focused on faculty and staff, I'm hoping to open this up in future editions of the DKV Festival, to open it up to students. I'm pretty confident when I say, having polled my students, many of whom are BXA and in other departments, that at least 50% of the student body has played piano. I think that's a pretty safe number to put out there. And I would say that many of them play extremely well. I know that in the past years, I've had extension students, elective students, who are incredibly talented and who would not call themselves pianists because everybody here at CMU has high standards, and so they wouldn't declare themselves to be a pianist if they're here studying computer science. But they actually play quite well, and in some cases better than some people who do declare themselves. I'll tell one little anecdote here. I had a student who was a master's computer science student who was studying with me for a couple of years. And one of the exercises that I have all my students do as just a warm-up, every lesson starts with a Chopin etude played in a different key. Every student picks a Chopin etude that they know really well, and then every time they come for a lesson, they play it in a different key. They transpose it until they've covered all 12 keys, and they get a little certificate from me. Well, this student had picked Opus 10 number 1, the arpeggios. He got through that pretty easily. He got his certificate, and I asked him, okay, now that you've done that, what's your next one that you want to do? And he said, well, I want to do Opus 10 number 5, the black key etude, where the right hand plays only black keys. It's extremely virtuosic, super fast. And it's one, coincidentally, that I have not done myself. I don't make my students do something I don't do myself. So this is my daily exercise. But I personally have not tried Opus 10 number 5 yet. So I said, great, you're going to be the first one to do this. Let's see how it goes. He came in, played it in the original key, did a great job. And then the next week he came in with G major, which is a half step up. All the black keys turn into white keys. It's a completely different experience. And I said to him, so how did the G major go? How did you find it? Was it hard? He said, I don't know yet. I haven't had a chance to work on it on the piano, but I've worked it out on my way to class. And he sat down and played it in tempo, almost note perfectly.
Yeah.
I didn't think, but there's a video of him. I was so astounded in the middle of the etude. I just pulled out my phone and just started taping him because it was just so unbelievable that somebody could do that without having actually practiced the piece. So just to say that there's an incredible amount of piano talent on this campus. And I hope that the lit session gives us the idea of looking for that and appreciating that and trying to build a little bit of community through some of these shared activities that many of us do. So that's, oh, and the Disklavier comes into play because there's going to be an archive of those recordings, not an audio recording or an audio video recording, which is a little bit intimidating, I think, for people who are playing, but rather a Disklavier recording where their gestures are recorded. And we use a little iPad to record that. It's much more low key. It's much more a reminder of the person who's playing as opposed to the music that's coming out from the playing. And I found that people are much more intrigued and much less intimidated by doing a Disklavier recording than they are doing an audio video recording with cameras and microphones and all that kind of stuff. And so the hope is, as we go forward with the Disklavier Festival and Lit Sessions, that there will be a growing archive of people who contribute to the Lit Session. And there will be eventually kind of a database somewhere where people can say, okay, let's see who on campus plays. Oh, I didn't know that so-and-so played. Oh, I didn't know that so-and-so. Let's hear President Jahanian play the piano. I don't know if I don't think Farnham plays piano, but I know his wife is very interested in piano and she may play. So maybe next time we can get someone like that. And I think that would be a very a nice way to create some bonds on this beautiful campus. So those are different ways that the Disklavier will be used at the Disklavier Festival, kind of classic standard music, improvisational jazz, real-time kind of modifications of playing, teaching remotely, and kind of community building, bringing people together with the piano technology. So I hope all of you attend. It's February 3, 4, and 5. The evening concerts are at 8 o'clock, and the afternoon things are at 3 when there are some. And I hope you all attend and enjoy. Could I just do a little poll here? I don't have a poll thing, but I wonder how many here on this Zoom have taken piano lessons. Can you put your hand signal up or something? Okay, 3, 4.
Well, this room here, we have everyone except for one person. So that's about a 99% in the room. Now, this is in the live office recording studio. Online, I don't know, but people are raising their hands there.
Okay, interesting. Yes, I'm not surprised. Of course, this is music and technology, so we should be getting a high number here. But I think that it would be surprising if that was a common question. You meet someone and you say, "Oh, do you play piano?" I think that would be a very interesting thing to see how many people have actually taken piano lessons and have empathy for that experience.
So Frederic, I know that in a way it's a stacked deck, but in my classes, which are open to everybody in the university, when I say who reads music, almost everyone raises their hand. And that means for sure that they had taken piano lesson. And many of them play 2, 3, and even 4 instruments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now, I have a question about the Disklavier. I remember you had sent me a link to watch the video of the guy who played the Goldberg variations, which itself is a pretty nice accomplishment. And then the Disklavier played it again backwards for each variation.
I have that. Let me share that. Let's see. Playing it, and then he's going to play the reversed version. See if I can find another spot. For those who know the Goldberg theme, of course, that's. It gives you a little bit of an idea. It's very interesting when you invert a major key, it turns minor.
Whoa.
And Bach being so abstract, it actually sounds really good. And the same dramatic structure is there, the same kind of directional dynamics are there. So it's a very interesting exercise. He'll demonstrate some of that as well in Natural Machines on Tuesday.
Okay, so here's another question. When a jazz performer plays on piano, does the piano improvise back to the jazz player?
I'm sure you could write an algorithm that would introduce, more and more complex processing of whatever's being played, including random, like newly invented passages. I'm sure that it's totally possible.
And last question.
Depends only on the algorithm that one wants to write.
Okay, guys, come on, get busy. So my other question is, when you play the two piano thing, do you have a click track to get started, or do you have a click all the way through so you know that it's in tempo, or do you just remember where you're stretching and making nuances in the tempo?
Yeah, I know. I'm watching my video, knowing that the cues, like the attacks, I do my head nod, or I did my head nod in the pre-recorded part, and I play with that cue. And then there are places where I have to remember, oh, the timing is like this. But those are the places where it's very interesting. I know exactly what the timing of that other guy is going to be. And I have to just trust myself that I know the other person really well.
Okay, so it's almost like you are doing it live, watching the gestures and kind of reacting to your previous self.
Exactly. Yeah, so the video and the gestures are extremely critical for this to work. Otherwise, you'd have to use a click track, and it's a little bit more, narrow and constricting.
Okay, so any other questions from the Blahakas recording studio or the people online?
I have one, Ricardo. This is Nick. I have a Disklavier. I've never taken a piano lesson. I can't play the piano. I have a recording studio in my house, so I use it for that. And I found a couple things came up along the way. I've had it for about 15 years now, I think. And I changed it when that 950, I think, model came out because it could do more things. But the one question I have, and I know Steinberg, I think, was acquired by Yamaha, and they did Dorico and some other note sheet music kind of. Is there any effort where the Disklavier can be upgraded or updated or something to actually go right into a sheet music format, or is that not realistic?
Oh, I think that exists for sure. I would say Dan Tepfer would know the answer to that. I think you can make the Disklavier function as any kind of MIDI keyboard.
Yeah, it comes out MIDI, and I can take MIDI, and I think not being a musician per se. I mean, I hacked on the guitar when everybody else was playing in the garage bands, but what I wanted to do was to be able to take the MIDI and not have to know a lot about music to get something that is reasonable. I had some requests from some Juilliard graduates because they were writing their own music and they have so much stored up that they would like to be able to do it and get And that's why I was asking that question, if there's something in the works that without taking it out of the Disklavier could go straight into a computer or something like that.
Yeah, I think that would, I don't do that myself, but I think that that probably is very common.
Okay.
People do that with MIDI keyboards, and this is just the Disklavier is just a very fancy MIDI keyboard.
Who was the name you mentioned that would be able to answer that? You said
Dan Tepfer, the jazz pianist who's coming on Tuesday.
is he's not at CMU?
No, he's coming from New York. He teaches at the Manhattan School.
Thank you.
So
Well,
I knew
I think for a compositional tool, the MIDI keyboard 2 notation is kind of standard. So I would guess that the Disklavier could serve that function as well.
So I knew that Nick would ask that question. So I've been thinking about this for the last couple of weeks, and I thought that maybe one of our music and tech students could take this on as a project. Because the problem is that when you cross hands, the exported notation is very complex.
I'll fund a project with you, Ricardo.
Okay, well, it's not going to be me.
Through you.
But the point that I thought of was that if you put gloves on the hands to send a signal along with it, and you could tell which hand was playing what note, that this could possibly solve the whole notation problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, I have a master's student who's very interested in just that, trying to use some kind of sensor apparatus on the hands to automatically assign fingerings to pieces.
Wow.
Okay, there we go. I think I need the name of that person.
Evelyn Davenport that's her name.
Wait, we have a few questions here.
I have a question. I'm just kind of curious if you could speak to when you're playing with the piano playing at the same time, both as a live musician and with the solenoids triggering, does that pose any particular challenges, or like what is that experience like to have keys, especially when the lines are overlapping that are being triggered other than by your own hands?
Right. No, I would assume that that is something that Dan has dealt with in his improvisations with the algorithms. Yeah, you'd have it's very strange. Every once in a while, I'll accidentally press play on my app while the student is playing, and suddenly, it's like someone else playing right, in the middle of their playing, and it's always very surprising and disconcerting. But yeah, definitely the key itself, if it's being played already by the finger, it won't be played by the Disklavier because it's like literally like someone else trying to play that note that you're playing. So that's definitely something to be aware of.
Ryan, you have a question.
So this thing can connect to the internet, right? So is there like a future where like it's like a new idea maybe you could propose as the Yamaha or something? So what if like the part like the music stand like where you put your sheet music on the piano, right? What if they convert that into a screen and then you could have like apps, for example, like a sight reading generator, it auto generates like a fugue for the pianist practice, or even like potentially even like you could like change the sound, like it's literally like a synthesizer almost, right? You can like a virtual synthesizer and then the screen is there and then you can turn the knobs. Like there's a lot of like is there a future where there's like a screen,
I think that's a great idea. It's a lot of real estate that sheet music stand on the piano, and I think for sure that should be a next step.
I have a question. I know you mentioned that there's some lag time between when you press the note and when it like appears in the system and how it's processed, right? So I was wondering, like, are there ways to reduce that amount of lag time to better aid like potentially like jamming across from different places, or even to like potentially incorporate other instruments? I'm talking more for like to use it for live music across multiple different places, because I definitely thought about that during COVID, where it's like the whole world was on lockdown, you couldn't really do live music, and the Zoom lag was just didn't make it very possible. So
Yeah, for sure. I know that Dan has worked on a low latency music connection with Disklavier, and he does real-time improvisation with people through the internet. The interesting thing is that the Disklavier signal is very low resolution. It's like I said, it's just pitch, duration, and velocity, and that's almost, it's ridiculous. You can play Beethoven sonata and then look at the MIDI file that it produces. It's like 70K. So to get that across the internet is extremely fast. It's more limited by the internet technology than it is by the Disklavier technology. And in fact, when we do these remote live lessons or master classes, we have to slow down the Disklavier to match Zoom, because Zoom is the latency on Zoom is what is the longest, and we have to adapt to that. So I think for sure the Disklavier is a very important kind of foundational tool for any kind of low latency music sharing and music making.
So Roger, if you're around, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I guess I would challenge Frederic's assertion about Disklavier being low latency because, and I'm not sure about modern ones, but at least early Disklaviers had a pretty high latency because if you play very softly, keys take a long time to go down. And so there's actually a high latency kind of in the instrument to respond to the input. And so I believe Yamaha actually had some compensation for MIDI. So basically, if you're trying to play a MIDI score, then let me think about this. Then, the fast notes would be heard earlier than the slow notes. And so they intentionally put a delay in. So if you're playing at mezzo forte to forte, there's a very high, like intentional delay to line the notes up with the soft ones.
You're absolutely right. And thank you for bringing that up. It is a physical machine that's playing, and that just requires its own latency numbers, I guess. Like you said, the softer note, the hammer still has to travel the same distance, but at a slower velocity. Just takes a little bit longer. I know the way we set up the app when we have remote live in Zoom, we're talking about like maybe 350 milliseconds, 250 millisecond latency to match the video and the playing. And it's always, we're trying to increase that only to make the video match the Disklavier. So it's still under 250, I would say, as a general rule. But any latency when you're trying to time things across the internet, that any latency will be a challenge.
Yeah, and I think for performers, it depends on what kind of music you're playing entirely, and also it depends on kind of your experience and how you're approaching things. But generally, I would say it gets extremely difficult to have a good musical experience with anyone when the latency hits 100 milliseconds, and even if you think about it, a string quartet players sit close to each other. They're maybe 5 or 6 feet apart, and part of that I think is for volume. You want to hear everyone else, and your instruments could be really right next to your ear, so you want to get close to them to hear it. But also the timing, the round trip across a string quartet might be around 10 or 15 milliseconds, and you can just imagine trying to sit 20 feet apart and play with someone. That puts the round trip up at 40 milliseconds, and that's like a completely different experience. And that's why orchestras can have a really hard time playing together just because of the size of the stage.
Yeah, you think of metronome at 120, that's 2 notes per second. You play 16th notes in that rhythm, which is not very fast, but basically that's 8 notes per second. That's just a little bit over 100 milliseconds already, and you're in another note. So you're going to be a whole note behind if you have even 100 milliseconds latency.
Right, right.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I have a question. Sorry. So, I was thinking about this Disklavier instrument, and as a pianist, a lot. I understand a lot of repertoire is very difficult, right? And that can be like a wall for people to kind of enjoy some pieces of repertoire. I wonder if this technology can be used to maybe make things more accessible in the sense that for some very difficult pieces, right? You might need to cheat or roll stuff, or maybe or just too difficult for some players at some levels, right? I wonder if maybe you can use this to or I don't know. This is just an idea. Do you think it would be sacrilegious to I don't know, have assistance in playing these difficult pieces, or I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
First of all, I think it's totally possible, and again, it's the nature of MIDI that allows things. When you play a certain note, that could trigger a whole series of actions, and those actions don't have to be musical. I was talking with Philip Glass about a project to light up the World Trade Tower in New York based on playing and MIDI signals that would trigger light patterns on the building. And there are so many things that can just be programmed into MIDI that have nothing to do with music. So anything that you can think of can be triggered by that. I know that with certain pieces, you can split left hand, right hand. They've been pre-recorded in such a way that, in fact, I just did a recording myself that came out on Yamaha PianoSoft of Schubert piano duos, four-hand piano pieces, the Fantasy, the Divertissement à la Hongroise, Lebenssturm, where I recorded piano 1, separately recorded piano 2, synchronized the two of them, and the person who purchases that can choose to play back piano 2 while playing piano 1 themselves, or play piano 1, play back piano 1 and play piano 2 by themselves, or play both of them together just to listen to the performance. So that's a kind of a way I could see, for example, someone trying to learn a piece and they want to do hands separate. They can have the Disklavier play the other hand so that it doesn't sound empty and missing, but you only have to deal with one hand playing at a time. So something as basic as that, or as intricate as when I play this note, it automatically plays a major chord above it, and so you can set up all your major chords by just playing one note in the bass and then play your right hand stuff. So it's really limited only by the algorithm that you write using the MIDI signal as opposed to the Disklavier itself. The Disklavier is just a very rich MIDI keyboard that has great sound.
So Frederic, is there anyone from Yamaha who would be willing to work with someone from Carnegie Mellon to develop the algorithms or the the brain of the Disklavier?
Oh, I would hope so. I would think so. Herac Teresian, who's going to be doing the intro to the Disklavier on Monday, is one of the people who works with the software development people. And I know that he's told me about a number of projects that are in progress for that. Of course, I'm pushing them as a musician. I want to be able to use this much more naturally and plug and play. So I'm pushing them always to be developing their software.
Okay, well, I hope we can take advantage of that. Someone who has a project in mind, to see what you can do.
For sure. I would be very happy to put people in touch that could make something like that happen.
Okay, any more questions?
May I ask a question as a Zoom participant?
Yep.
All right. So your talk reminds me of a couple months ago when I went to Steinway and they showed me their Stereo program as part of a trial. They had me go onto the keyboard, play my piece, and they played it back in much the same way I imagine a Disklavier. But do you think of Steinway and the Steinway Stereo as like a business competitor? Would Disklavier have the same level of technology to transcribe how fast the pedal is being played, or the velocity of each note as it's being played? And what opportunities are there? Are Steinway sharing this technology? Are there any public databases for the kind of technology behind both Stereo and Disklavier?
Yeah, Stereo is a much more was kind of late to the game, coming just maybe I would say 10, 15 years ago versus Yamaha 35 years. The technology is pretty much this, very similar, and certainly the end goals are almost identical, just creating this kind of player piano capacity for the piano. I know that Stereo is developing something where you can edit the MIDI directly in the app, and I think that's a great step. That's something I've been pushing Yamaha to do. So I see these as competitors, but really, like they're both exploring the same thing, and I think that in the end, there's no reason not to use one or the other. It's just that Yamaha has many more products developed around the research and technology that they've developed. They have a silent piano, they have transacoustic piano, they have avant-garde, they have all sorts of different things that are hybrid instruments combining different characteristics. And each of them has a different use, a different service. So, Steinway is kind of late getting into this hybrid technology, but they're there now because everybody has to be technology oriented at this point. And so it's great that Stereo is there, and I think the two of them definitely are compatible. Unfortunately, the business aspect of things makes them competitors. So that's a separate issue, separate topic.
Okay, Frederic, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you. I hope everybody comes February 3, 4, 5 in Kresge.
I'm ending my class early on the Monday night.
Thank you.
They have to go to your thing.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you.